Certain moments in life force you to decide whether you will continue taking silent insults or use the very shadows people cast over you to tear down their carefully constructed empires. I had spent nearly 3 decades playing the background role in my family, watching everyone treat my brother like royalty while treating me like an unpaid assistant. They never bothered to learn what I actually did for a living, assuming my quiet routine meant I was harmless, invisible, and completely lacking ambition. That miscalculation proved to be the absolute biggest mistake of my brother, Julian's life. To my parents, Julian was the golden child, a rising star in international diplomacy who practically walked on water. My father had spent 40 years building a legacy in government service, and he viewed Julian as the sole heir to his proud reputation. Every family gathering was a stage for Julian's achievements, while my own existence was treated as little more than minor background noise. The dynamic reached its peak during a formal dinner celebrating Julian's appointment to a high-level peace delegation. Sitting in an upper-crust restaurant, my father raised his glass to toast Julian, praising him as a visionary leader shaping history. When I tried to share that I had just been assigned as a senior analyst for a top-tier intelligence unit, my father merely gave me a patronizing pat on the hand, remarking how nice it was that I kept things organized. My mother was no different, constantly reminding me that Julian carried the heavy weight of public life while my career was safe, quiet, and predictable. She genuinely believed my days were spent filing paperwork in a stress-free environment, completely oblivious to the fact that I spent 12 hours a day inside high-security vault monitoring covert threat signals. Their condescension was frustrating, but I had long stopped trying to convince them of my worth. While Julian was busy attending cocktail parties and soaking in unearned admiration, I was sitting under blue monitor lights tracing encrypted data bursts from high-value foreign assets. During a routine sweep, I flagged a subtle anomaly in a transmission linked to a high-priority covert operation, codenamed Helios. The sender had made a fundamental mistake using a deprecated key, revealing that an active mole was embedded directly within our nation's upcoming diplomatic delegation. My section chief immediately assigned me to lead the counterintelligence investigation. I was not just an assistant or a clerk in the world that actually mattered. I was a spy hunter holding the keys to national security. The paradox was almost laughable, as the family that viewed me as useless had no idea. I held the authority to dismantle everything they valued with a single official report. The absolute breaking point occurred during a morning diplomatic breakfast, right? Before the crucial treaty negotiations. Julian, surrounded by diplomats and military brass, spotted me speaking near the table and decided to showcase his charm at my expense. He loudly announced to the room that his little sister was present to take simple notes and try her best to keep up with the smart people. The polite chuckles around the table made my blood run cold, but I kept my face entirely impassive. Right beside him stood Commander Sterling, my actual operational chief, who observed the entire interaction with a tight jaw. Julian thought he was delivering a clever joke, unaware that he was demonstrating total tactical ignorance in front of the exact man who signed off on my classified intelligence assessments. That humiliating moment shifted something fundamental inside me, transforming years of silent resentment into a razor-sharp operational focus. This was no longer just about surviving toxic family dynamics. It was now a matter of national security and professional duty. I returned to my secure workspace and crafted an intelligence brief embedded with specific references to visual signaling protocols, subtle breadcrumbs meant to prepare Commander Sterling for what was coming. I then quietly pulled the delegation's security logs to check for non-standard equipment registered under Julian's name. A sharp security officer confirmed that Julian had insisted on wearing a custom luxury lapel pin that had not gone through standard government issue protocols. Everything clicked into place instantly. My arrogant brother was not just reckless, he was the compromised asset codenamed Helios. Hours later, we took our seats in the grand negotiation chamber, a room heavy with historical weight and high-stakes tension. I sat slightly behind Commander Sterling and Julian, holding a blank notepad just like the dutiful secretary my family believed me to be. Up in the dignitary gallery, my parents sat proudly, watching Julian preen as if the entire world revolved around his magnificent presence. Julian turned around, caught my eye, and smugly mouthed the words to take good notes one last time. Across the long mahogany table sat the enemy's lead negotiator, tapping his index finger in a subtle, rhythmic sequence against the wood. Anyone else would have written it off as a nervous habit, but I translated the Morse code pattern in real time as he signaled his asset about a failed video feed. The enemy negotiator signaled to check the pin, confirming every single piece of evidence I needed to close the trap. Without a single trace of emotion on my face, I wrote down the exact translation on my pad, explicitly identifying Julian as the mole wearing the hidden transmitter. I calmly slid the notepad onto the table directly in front of Commander Sterling, who read the message without moving a single muscle. The air in the room plummeted 10 degrees as Commander Sterling slowly turned his head to stare directly at my brother. Julian's smug grin vanished, replaced by absolute, unadulterated terror as he realized the commander was looking at him with total hostility. Panic took over, and Julian instinctively reached up to clutch the custom lapel pin on his jacket, sealing his own fate right in front of everyone. Commander Sterling gave a barely visible signal, and federal agents materialized out of the shadows behind Julian's chair to detain him. The entire chamber went dead silent as my father stood up in the gallery, red-faced and screaming about the disrespect shown to his son. Commander Sterling rose to his full height and calmly informed the entire room that Julian was being arrested on suspicion of treason. The aftermath was a whirlwind of high-level debriefings and massive political fallout, but I remained entirely calm throughout the process. In a private room, Commander Sterling formally revoked my old analyst title and appointed me as his chief special advisor for counterintelligence. My family had spent a lifetime treating me like an afterthought, but in the real world, my expertise had just saved the nation from a catastrophic breach. A year later, I stood at the head of a massive conference table in the White House briefing senior officials on emerging global threats. Everyone in that room sat quietly, hanging on my every word and diligently taking notes on my analysis. I no longer cared about receiving validation from a family that only valued superficial status, because I had built a career rooted in real power and mutual respect. Late one afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from my mother, desperately begging me to testify on Julian's behalf before his trial. She rambled on about how he was just a good boy who fell in with the wrong crowd, still refusing to accept the reality of what he had done. I felt no anger or pity as I read her words, simply moving the cursor over the archive button and clearing the message without a single regret.